All right. Shabbat Shalom. Yeah. We are in Shemot, chapter 10, Exodus chapter 10. We'll be starting our Torah portion this morning. There are handouts, I think, been handed out. Yeah, thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. And I think you'll find them particularly helpful. And I'm going to refer to the handout. So, during the teaching portion. Okay. Let's begin. Adonai said to Moshe, "Go to Pharaoh, for I have made him and his servants hard-hearted, so that I can demonstrate these signs of mine among them, so that you can tell your son and your grandson about what I did to Egypt and about my signs that I demonstrated among them, and so that you will all know that I am Adonai." Moshe and Aaron went into Pharaoh and said to him, "Here is what Adonai, God of the Hebrews, says. How much longer will you refuse to submit to me? Let my people go, so that they can worship me. Otherwise, if you refuse to let my people go, tomorrow I will bring locusts into your territory. One won't be able to see the ground, so completely will the locusts cover it. They will eat anything you still have that escaped the hail, including every tree you have growing in the field. They will fill your houses and those of your servants and of all the Egyptians. It will be like nothing your fathers or their fathers have ever seen since the day they were born until today." Then he turned his back and left. Pharaoh's servants said to him, "How much longer must this fellow be a snare for us? Let the people go and worship Adonai their God. Don't you understand yet that Egypt is being destroyed?" So Moshe and Aaron were brought to Pharaoh again, and he said to them, "Go, worship Adonai your God. But who exactly is going?" Moshe answered, "We will go with our young and our old, our sons and our daughters, and we will go with our flocks and herds, for we must celebrate a feast to Adonai." Pharaoh said to them, "Adonai certainly will be with you if I ever let you go with your children. It's clear that you're up to no good. Nothing doing. Just the men among you may go and worship Adonai. That's what you want, isn't it?" And they were driven out of Pharaoh's presence. Adonai said to Moshe, "Reach out your hand over the land of Egypt, so that locusts will invade the land and eat every plant that the hail had left." Moshe reached out with his staff over the land of Egypt, and Adonai caused an east wind to blow on the land all day and all night. And in the morning, the east wind brought the locusts. The locusts went up over all the land of Egypt and settled throughout Egypt's territory. It was an invasion more severe than there had ever been before or will ever be again. They completely covered the ground so that the ground looked black. They ate every plant growing from the ground, and all the fruit of the trees left by the hail. Not one green thing remained, not a tree and not a plant in the field in all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh hurried to summon Moshe and Aaron and said, I have sinned against Adonai your God and against you. Now therefore, please forgive my sin just this once, and intercede with Adonai your God, so that he will at least take away from me this deadly plague. He went out from Pharaoh and interceded with Adonai. Adonai reversed the wind and made it blow very strongly from the west. It took up the locusts and drove them into the Sea of Suf. Not one locust remained on Egyptian soil. But Adonai made Pharaoh hard-hearted, and he didn't let the people of Israel go. Adonai said to Moshe, reach out your hand toward the sky, and there will be darkness over the land of Egypt. Darkness so thick it can be felt. Moshe reached out his hand toward the sky, and there was a thick darkness in the entire land of Egypt for 3 days. People couldn't see each other, and no one went anywhere for 3 days. But all the people of Israel had light in their homes. Pharaoh summoned Moshe and said, go, worship Adonai. Only leave your flocks and herds behind. Your children may go with you. Moshe answered, you must also see to it that we have sacrifices and burnt offerings, so that we can sacrifice to Adonai our God. Our livestock will also go with us. Not a hoof will be left behind, because we must choose some of them to worship Adonai our God, and we don't know which ones we will need to worship Adonai until we get there. But Adonai made Pharaoh hard-hearted, and he would not let them go. Pharaoh said to them, get away from me, and you had better not see my face again, because the day you see my face, you will die. Moshe answered, well spoken. I will see your face no more. Chapter 11. Adonai said to Moshe, I'm going to bring still one more plague on Pharaoh and Egypt, and after that, he will let you leave here. When he does let you go, he will throw you out completely. Now, tell the people that every man is to ask his neighbor and every woman her neighbor for gold and silver jewelry. Adonai made the Egyptians favorably disposed toward the people. Moreover, Moshe was regarded by Pharaoh's servants and the people as a very great man in the land of Egypt. Moshe said, here's what Adonai says. About midnight, I will go out into Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt will die. From the firstborn of Pharaoh, sitting on his throne, to the firstborn of the slave girl at the handmill, and all the firstborn of the livestock. There will be a horrendous wailing throughout all the land of Egypt. There has never been another like it, and there never will be again. But not even a dog's growl will be heard against any of the people of Yisrael, neither against people nor against animals. In this way, you will realize that Adonai distinguishes between Egyptians and Yisrael. All your servants will come down to me, prostrate themselves before me, and say, "Get out, you and all the people who follow you." And after that, I will go out. And he went out from Pharaoh in the heat of anger. Adonai said to Moshe, "Pharaoh will not listen to you, so that still more of my wonders will be shown in the land of Egypt." Moshe and Aaron did all these wonders before Pharaoh, but Adonai had made Pharaoh hard-hearted, and he didn't let the people of Israel leave his land. Chapter 12. Adonai spoke to Moshe and Aaron in the land of Egypt. He said, "You are to begin your calendar from this month. It will be the first month of the year for you. Speak to all the assembly of Israel and say, on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb or kid for his family, one per household, except that if the household is too small for a whole lamb or kid, then he and his next door neighbor should share one, dividing it in proportion to the number of people eating it. Your animal must be without defect, a male in its first year, and you may choose it from either the sheep or the goats. You are to keep it until the 14th day of the month, and then the entire assembly of the community of Israel will slaughter it at dusk. They are to take some of the blood and smear it on the two sides and top of the door frame at the entrance of the house in which they eat it. That night they are to eat the meat, roasted in the fire. They are to eat it with matzah and maror. Don't eat it raw or boiled, but roasted in the fire with its head, the lower parts of its legs, and its inner organs. Let nothing of it remain till morning. If any of it does remain, burn it up completely. Here is how you are to eat it, with your belt fastened, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And you are to eat it hurriedly. It is Adonai's Pesach. For that night I will pass through the land of Egypt and kill all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both men and animals. And I will execute judgment against all the gods of Egypt. I am Adonai. The blood will serve you as a sign, marking the houses where you are. When I see the blood, I will pass over you. When I strike the land of Egypt, the death blow will not strike you. This will be a day for you to remember and celebrate as a festival to Adonai from generation to generation. You are to celebrate it by a perpetual regulation. For 7 days you are to eat matzah. On the first day, remove the leaven from your houses, for whoever eats chametz from the first to the 7th day is to be cut off from Yisrael. On the 1st and 7th days, you are to have an assembly set aside for God. On these days, no work is to be done, except what each must do to prepare his food. You may do only that. You are to observe the festival of matzah, for in this very day I brought your divisions out of the land of Egypt. Therefore, you two are to observe this day from generation to generation by a perpetual regulation. From the evening of the 14th day of the first month until the evening of the 21st day, you are to eat matzah. During those 7 days, no leaven is to be found in your houses. Whoever eats food with chametz in it is to be cut off from the community of Yisrael. It doesn't matter whether he is a foreigner or a citizen of the land. Eat nothing with chametz in it. Wherever you live, eat matzah. Then Moshe called for all the leaders of Israel and said, select and take lambs for your families and slaughter the Pesach Lamb. Take a bunch of hyssop leaves and dip it in the blood which is in the basin and smear it on the 2 sides and top of the door frame. Then none of you is to go out the door of his house until morning. For Adonai will pass through to kill the Egyptians. But when he sees the blood on the top and on the 2 sides, Adonai will pass over the door and will not allow the slaughterer to enter your houses and kill you. You are to observe this as a law, you and your descendants forever. When you come to the land which Adonai will give you, as he has promised, you are to observe this ceremony. When your children ask you, what do you mean by this ceremony? Say, it is the sacrifice of Adonai's Pesach, because Adonai passed over the houses of the people of Yisrael in Egypt, when he killed the Egyptians, but spared our houses. The people of Yisrael bowed their heads and worshipped. Then the people of Israel went and did as Adonai had ordered Moshe and Aaron. That is what they did. At midnight, Adonai killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh sitting on his throne to the firstborn of the prisoner in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of livestock. Pharaoh got up in the night, he, all his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was horrendous wailing in Egypt, for there wasn't a single house without someone dead in it. He summoned Moshe and Aaron by night and said, up and leave my people, both you and the people of Israel, and go, serve Adonai as you said. Take both your flocks and your herds as you said, and get out of here. But bless me too. The Egyptians pressed to send the people out of the land quickly because they said, otherwise we'll all be dead. The people took their dough before it had become leavened and wrapped their kneading bowls in their clothes, on their shoulders. The people of Israel had done what Moshe had said. They had asked the Egyptians to give them silver and gold jewelry and clothing. And Adonai had made the Egyptians so favorably disposed toward the people that they had let them have whatever they requested. Thus, they plundered the Egyptians. The people of Israel traveled from Ramses to Sukkot, some 600,000 men on foot, not counting children. A mixed crowd also went up with them, as well as livestock in large numbers, both flocks and herds. They baked matzah loaves from the dough they had brought out of Egypt, since it was unleavened, because they had been driven out of Egypt without time to prepare supplies for themselves. The time the people of Israel lived in Egypt was 430 years. at the end of 430 years to the day, all the divisions of Adonai left the land of Egypt. This was a night when Adonai kept vigil to bring them out of the land of Egypt. And this same night continues to be a night when Adonai keeps vigil for all the people of Israel through all their generations. Adonai said to Moshe and Aaron, "This is the regulation for the Pesach Lamb. No foreigner is to eat it. But if anyone has a slave he bought for money, then when you have circumcised him, he may eat it. Neither a traveler nor a hired servant may eat it. It is to be eaten in one house. You are not to take any of the meat outside the house, and you are not to break any of its bones. The whole community of Israel is to keep it. If a foreigner staying with you wants to observe Adonai's Pesach, all his males must be circumcised. Then he may take part and observe it. He will be like a citizen of the land. But no uncircumcised person is to eat it. The same teaching is to apply equally to the citizen and to the foreigner living among you." All the people of Israel did just as Adonai had ordered Moshe and Aaron. On that very day, Adonai brought the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their divisions. Chapter 13. Adonai said to Moshe, "Set aside for me all the firstborn, whatever is first from the womb among the people of Israel, both of animals and both of humans and of animals, belongs to me." Moshe said to the people, "Remember this day on which you left Egypt, the abode of slavery, because Adonai, by the strength of his hand, has brought you out of this place. Do not eat chametz. You are leaving today in the month of Aviv. When Adonai brings you into the land of the Canaanite, Hittite, Amori, Hivi, and Yevusi, which he swore to your ancestors to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you are to observe this ceremony in this month. For 7 days you are to eat matzah, and the 7th day is to be a festival for Adonai. Matzah is to be eaten throughout the 7 days. Neither chametz nor leavening agent are to be seen with you throughout your territory. On that day you are to tell your son, 'It is because of what Adonai did for me when I left Egypt.' Moreover, it will serve you as a sign on your hand and as a reminder between your eyes, so that Adonai's Torah may be on your lips. Because with a strong hand Adonai brought you out of Egypt. Therefore, you are to observe this regulation at its proper time, year after year. When Adonai brings you into the land of the Canaanite, as he swore to you and your ancestors, and gives it to you, you are to set apart for Adonai everything that is first from the womb. Every firstborn male animal will belong to Adonai. Every firstborn from a donkey you are to redeem with a lamb. But if you choose not to redeem it, you must break its neck. But from people, you are to redeem every firstborn son. When at some future time your son asks you, 'What is this?' then say to him, with a strong hand, Adonai brought us out of Egypt, out of the abode of slavery. When Pharaoh was unwilling to let us go, Adonai killed all the firstborn males in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of humans and the firstborn of animals. This is why I sacrifice to Adonai any male that is first from the womb of an animal. But all the firstborn of my sons I redeem. This will serve as a sign on your hand and at the front of a headband around your forehead, that with a strong hand Adonai brought us out of Egypt. So, what questions do you have? Tom always has a question. I was reflecting.
Why a donkey?
What's that?
Why the donkey?
Why is what? Okay.
In verse 13 of chapter 13,
Yeah.
every first offspring of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb. But if you don't redeem it, you shall break its neck. But why a donkey? I've always wondered why.
That is a great question. That's a very good question. And it deserves a very good answer.
One that you don't have.
And unfortunately, you're not going to get a very good answer. But I will tell you what I know. I don't know. I have some suspicions, but I don't know. Often in the text of Scripture, we see a high value placed upon donkeys. The beast of burden, it really does a lot of work. A very efficient mode of transportation to carry burdens and that. And there's a value placed upon that. There's something about having a donkey. Yeah.
And I know in Numbers, the angel of the Lord appears on a donkey with a sword in front of
There's a prominent place.
Balaam.
Balaam's donkey even was able to speak.
That's what I mean.
By God's
That's what I'm
direction.
saying. And then he's confronted by anyways.
So there is a lot, and so the donkey of all this livestock, God gives an option to be redeemed. You sacrifice or substitute a lamb in place of the donkey. And the firstborn also is to be redeemed, of course. So the firstborn son is also to be redeemed. But, yeah. But if they choose not to redeem the donkey, no problem. Just break its neck. Right. Okay.
Maybe it represents a stubborn person?
What's that?
Maybe the donkey represents a stubborn person?
Represents
A stubborn person.
a stubborn person. Wow. Wow. So, a donkey could represent a stubborn person, or we could say it this way. Maybe the donkey represents a certain level of free will. One person's stubbornness is another person's determination, right? You're so stubborn. No, I'm just determined. Yeah. How do you look at it, right? It's two sides of the same coin, right? So it depends, heads or tails. I don't know. I'm just saying. I know I've been accused of being stubborn, and I'm just one of the most amiable people you could ever know. Can you imagine me being accused of being stubborn? Oh, I say, no, I'm simply determined. But if you want the true response to that, you probably should ask my wife.
And Yeshua redeemed you, right?
What's that?
He redeemed you.
Oh, yes.
Redeeming the donkey. That's what I'm saying.
I've been redeemed? No. Yeah, I've been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Amen. So, Miriam, do you have your chai? Interesting. Yeah, I noticed that. So I thought maybe you had hidden it or something. Maybe the chain broke.
I don't work anymore, so 6 days of the week I'm studying for and, just whatever.
Oh, I see.
So here it was today, and I woke up and I went, oh, and I looked at the clock and went, oh my gosh, I've got 10 minutes to get ready. Marcel's gonna be at my door, or Sarah will be at my door, not in 10 minutes, but I was ready. So, that's what.
Yeah, sometimes it is difficult to get ready when you have some distance to come, or maybe somebody you got to get ready. Somebody's coming to pick you up, right? That sort of thing. So, yeah, it makes it challenging sometimes. But Miriam, often you'll notice, not today, of course, but you'll notice that she wears a necklace, and it has the Hebrew letter Chet and Yod attached to it, which is a shortened form of the word Kayim. Kayim, which is the Hebrew word for life, right? It's a plural, Kayim. But a singular would just be Chai, right? And sometimes we just say Chai, right? And so the interesting thing about that letter, the Chet, is that it actually looks like a door frame. The lintel and the doorpost on either side. And and it's a symbol for life. It's a symbol for life, and it's recognized in Hebrew as a symbol for life. And that looks to the significance of the Pesach, the Passover, in which the angel of death passed over the houses of Israel that had the blood on the lintel and the doorposts, and consequently, their firstborn were spared. Okay. Other comments, questions? Okay. There are so many points here, it's somewhat difficult to really focus. So there's so much that you can focus on. And Tony Robinson focuses on something I'd like to bring our attention to in your handout. And I just mentioned about the Chet, and he has that in your handout as well. And following that, he has a section called The Theme of New Birth. The theme of new birth. So looking at this idea of life, of being a symbol of life and of new birth, he quotes from a rabbi at the bottom of the page, if you can find the theme of new birth. And I can't tell you what page it's on because I don't have a clue what page it's on. So, but I'd like to look at that quote from Rabbi Elkanan Samet. And when Tony was here just recently, he actually mentioned this yeshiva, Har Etzion Yeshiva. So he's quoting from this rabbi, and it's fascinating. He says, the story of Moshe's birth belongs to the series of biblical narratives whose subject is the rebirth of the main character. He says, see my shur on Parashat Vayera in 5760. He gives you a website. You can actually go and look at that. And then he says, in a story of rebirth, we find a baby, young child, or youth whose life is endangered to the point where he nearly dies. Have any of you ever experienced that in your life? Okay, I have. He is miraculously saved from that danger. Yes. And his life is returned to him as a gift. Yes. And maybe that's why I focus on that. I identify with this. The Torah relates to this miracle as a sort of rebirth of the child. The first child whose rebirth is recounted in the Torah is Ishmael's. While he wanders about with his mother Hagar in the wilderness of Beersheba, their supply of water runs out. Hagar casts the child under one of the bushes and distances herself, for she said, "Let me not witness the death of the child." An angel reveals himself to her, opening her eyes to see a well of water. And thus, Ishmael's life is saved. Yitzhak, too, is born again. This is a rabbi, okay? This is the Orthodox rabbi using this terminology. Just thought I might mention that. This is not an evangelical pastor. Okay. Yitzhak, too, is born again after being bound to the altar on Mount Moriah. At the last moment, after Abraham has stretched out his hand to seize the knife, the angel intervenes and prevents it. Joseph, too, after being thrown into the pit with the intention that he will die there, is brought back to life, as it were, when Midianite traders pull him out of the pit and sell him as a slave. After the story of Moshe and his rebirth, we find this motif reappearing in the prophets, in the episode of the resuscitation of the Shunammite woman's son by Elisha, and in the salvation of Joash from the hands of Athaliah by Yehoshua, his sister. In each of these stories, the rebirth signifies the beginning of the child's existence on a different level. His existence is imbued with a new destiny. And Tony later on makes the point that the Torah is full of the Messiah. And he brings up the story about Yeshua speaking to Nicodemus at night, a teacher of Israel, a member of the highest court in the land, the Sanhedrin. And he talks about this same theme, about the theme of rebirth. And Nicodemus is like perplexed. And Yeshua says, "You are a teacher of Israel, and you do not know this?" So he was drawing the point that this theme, this recurring theme, should have been known and realized. And in fact, this rabbi knows the theme and is teaching this theme, and is not in any reference whatsoever that he is referring to Yeshua, Rabbi Yeshua. So, okay. Any comments? I don't know. I heard something. Oh, it was you. Okay. I looked over this way. I actually thought it might be you. Yeah.
What is the definition of redeem?
What?
13:13.
Oh, what is the definition
Of redeem. In
of redeem?
13:13.
In 13:13. Okay.
Where you redeem a donkey with a lamb.
Okay, we're back to the donkey again?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. That's good. Yeah. You're very determined, aren't you?
No, that was that. So just follow up.
Follow up. No, that's very good. 13:30. Every firstborn from a donkey you are to redeem with a lamb, but if you choose not to redeem it, you must break its neck. But from people you are to redeem every firstborn son. Just want to make sure to make a distinction between breaking the neck of the donkey and breaking the neck of your firstborn son, right? Okay, so you are to redeem the son, and you have the option of redeeming the donkey or not. Now, redemption, in this sense, is that you have to pay for its life.
And who are you paying?
You have to, yeah. So the redemption for the donkey is the life of a lamb, a substitute. A substitute can redeem you. That's a pretty powerful thing, isn't it? You can be redeemed by a substitute.
Sacrifice the lamb then?
Yes, yes, yeah. Wherever is permitted. At this time,
There's no temple, there's no.
I'm not sure at this time. That's a good question. That's a very good question. Do you know? Oh,
I was kind of connecting with what Laura
Car.
was saying in the stubbornness of the donkey.
yeah, yeah.
So then we are to redeem the first. Oh, thank you. We're to redeem the firstborn son. He's a person. So then would it be Yah saying the closest animal to a person would be a donkey?
Okay.
So this animal you can redeem with a lamb, like you would redeem your son, that you don't kill him, you redeem him. And then also I was remembering that the donkey was a symbol of royalty because Solomon said David said you have Solomon ride on my, but it was a mule. Is that the same as a donkey?
No, it's a donkey. Yeah, I think it's a donkey.
So that was just kind of my thoughts.
Yeah.
The stubborn, more stubborn.
Hmm.
All right, so,
Yeah.
a donkey is not, I think this might just represent a change in their lifestyle. A donkey cannot be eaten, and it cannot be sacrificed. So, in this new lifestyle that they're about to engage in, a mule, or a donkey, I'm sorry, different than a mule, doesn't have the value it had in Egypt. It's a beast of burden. It's meant to do work, and Yahweh doesn't need that kind of service. So a mule or a donkey suddenly has less value in this new form of existence that they're about to engage upon, or so it would seem, or that's an idea, I guess. And of course, you break its neck because you can't kill it in the manner of sacrifice. So you would have to break its neck because you couldn't kill it like it was an offering or a redemptive offering. I'm throwing that out there.
So those are good questions, and I'm going to have to do some more study, research on my own to deal with that as well. So.
Also, the donkeys are actually really hard-working animals. Their body tells them to shut down when they get exhausted. And that's why people can think that they're stubborn, because they sit down. But these animals are actually smart. They know when to stop.
Oh, that's a great insight. Great insight. Yeah. And that's probably also the context that's often given. People do lose patience with donkeys because they're so dependable, usually.
And I've got one more comment, Stevie. This has
Yeah.
always bothered me. In 13, I think this is the first reference, but I could be absolutely wrong. In 13:5, it mentions that the land that they're going to is a land flowing with milk and honey.
Mm-hmm.
That reference has always disturbed me because it seems wildly out of place, because a land flowing with milk and honey isn't a typical description of anything up to this point with value. Eden wasn't flowing with milk and honey. They're strange references, and they don't necessarily even go together as things of pure substance or things that you need to sustain your life or your family. I mean, milk, okay, is a byproduct. Honey is something made by a bee. These are just strange points of reference if you're going to be referring to this great place to live. Now, I know we've all become accustomed to it. It's almost just become more of an analogy for something
or
great.
idiom at this point.
It is an idiom, yes. But why milk and honey? That's just a strange things to note.
He's got the answer. Awesome.
Well, I think in milk and honey in that culture, honey was a rare commodity but high valued, along with milk. Think of Samson when he killed the lion. I mean, he went so much as far as eating the honey from an unclean carcass. But the honey was a rare commodity, but the value of it was very high.
Okay, but still again, why choose those substances when it's not about value?
It was in that culture when they used that verbiage. What's something with today's culture that it is rare but has a higher value?
Okay, you would say diamond. But how would that make it a great place to be? You see what I'm saying? So how do you ascribe value for these people who are in this situation, who are going to this place? Oh, there's milk and honey. So what?
Well, I think part of the might be I think part of it could be because for us, for most of my life, all of my life, if I've gone hungry, it's been by choice. I would fast, and that was by choice. But many people don't have the option of going hungry by choice. They're forced to go hungry because there's no food available. So a land flowing with milk and honey is a land of great produce, of great sustainability. And so from idea, I mean, let's think about it. One of the things that we sometimes do not value very much, and in fact, we may even lament the prices of groceries. But when you realize the importance of that sustenance, of that food, it's quite a bargain that we have, that the ready access to food. And maybe that's why we don't feel that idiom or imagery as sharply as somebody who has actually starved, where they would give everything they owned for a meal, for one meal. If you're that hungry, where you would give everything that you own just for food, then you have a different value placed upon sustenance that God actually provides.
I think
Yeah. So.
I think all of those can be true, but has anybody looked at the possibility of that being a shadow and type of Yahweh, that he has always said he would be with them, but they've always questioned that and taking them into a land of milk and honey. Milk represents nutrition and the building up and supplication, and the honey represents something that they said is valued, but more importantly, it has certain enzymes that gives them immunities, so it would be a type of protection. So relating to it as, I'll be there and build you up and allow you to grow and protect you from the enemy.
Wow, imagine that, a medicine that tastes great. There is the psalm about the words of the Lord are perfect, sweeter than honey, or the drips of a honeycomb, and yet it reminds me that the Hebrews or the Jews would actually use honey to help their children learn the Hebrew alphabet. They would form the letters with drippings of honey, and then the children would lick that, and then that way they would lick the honey, and they're learning their Hebrew, and that's a sweet way to learn Hebrew. So, whatever. Okay, very good. Well, we are out of time. Great comments and questions, and there was a lot. I didn't know where to go with this. There was so much. We could have, besides the rebirth, we could have talked about resurrection. We could have even spent the whole time on circumcision. So anyway, thank you for your attention.